Well, we have made it through the biggest college hockey weekend of the year for Division Three. A wonderful gamut of college hockey conquests were won. Uh, Not as much drama at the very end as we would have expected, with Hobart comfortably defeating Norwich to end out the NEHC season, and the NESCAC being settled with Hamilton punching their ticket to the national tournament via the NESCAC title this afternoon, really locking us into our field for the year, which is pretty exciting. Got a couple of unexpected um, unexpected teams joining the fray this year, with the likes of Wisconsin Eau Claire and likely low-ranked teams, and as such will likely be invading Utica and Aurora respectively in the opening round to really give those teams their well-deserved first-round advantage. Really, ultimately, one of the best and biggest D3 hockey seasons of all time for both the men's and the women's. Just some real great stuff across multiple leagues, multiple conferences, multiple teams. This could be one of the most tight and exciting tournaments we've seen in several years. Hobart does not feel like a mortal lock to run it back. Not to say that they look beatable compared to years past. It's just that it more so feels like the teams at the top have really closed the gap, and that's just great for Division Three hockey. I mean, even in the women's game, the gap has definitely been closed. We're between Middlebury, Amherst, Augsburg, and Rivers Falls. Really, any of the top four teams plus kind of feel like they're going to be able to do something great over in the women's Division Three world this year in the playoffs, and that's some really exciting stuff to see. Where there's at least a level of parity similar to the Division One level relative to men's hockey, where there's 4 to 6 teams that have a legitimate shot this year in both the men's and the women's brackets. Thinking back to as everybody saw that follows us on socials, we were at the MASCAC Championship game 24 hours or so ago. Really just a phenomenally played game. Fitchburg State really did show up and earn their conference championship into the new era of the MASCAC. Unfortunately for them, and fortunately for them, they're headed to have truly a once in a lifetime experience for most of those guys going into probably Utica, where they get to play in a professional slash D1 level atmosphere. Definitely might be a bigger moment than they're prepared for, but that's not surprising. Maybe they're going to shock the world, maybe they're not, but at least it's an entertaining conversation worth having. Unfortunately for both Fitchburg and Eau Claire, going up against potentially Utica and Aurora again, all subject to change, but going up against a top four team in the program coming off of a loss is definitely not a place I'd like to be in. Um, Knowing that some of the best guys in the country probably got bagged and are going to have to come out here and really show that the regular season wasn't a fluke. It's definitely not the most pleasant game that those guys are ever going to play in, and I wish them luck, and we'll see how it goes. Moving on to maybe some NHL trade deadline discourse. This was certainly one of the trade deadlines of all time. Not as much activity as we've seen historically. Not as many deals as 23, 24, 21, 22 at the deadline, but certainly some big headlines, some big trades, some big head scratchers. Probably, some people aren't gonna. I don't really know what I would call the biggest trade of the deadline, but I would certainly say that the Ottawa Buffalo deal was the most out of left field, which was Josh Norris to Buffalo alongside Jared Bernard Docker for Dylan Cousins, Dennis Gilbert, and the second round pick in 2026. I didn't personally see this trade as being on the horizon. We knew Cousins was likely to be moved at some point,
Yeah.
but I don't know if I was a big fan of this deal on the surface. What are some of your thoughts on that one, Liam?
Um, I I'm interested to see if he has reclamation project potential there. Because there is a decent track record of the Buffalo stench just coming off of people, which is sort of probably an indictment of the developmental capacity that they have, or lack thereof. And, but it's like um, he's not exactly landing in an alternative space. That's a significant leap up for him, considering that team's track record of just posting up stats that end up being empty calories because they'll have plenty of superstar producers, but they've been out of the playoff picture for a long time. This year might be an exception. You never know what how the Atlantic can shape up. They do, of course, have a distinct advantage over the Bruins, who are, claiming to have retooled, but really looks like they have, launched a rebuild, with the aggressiveness of their selling. If you include Frederick, they had 4 pieces sold off before the deadline that were consequential. But if you're just going off of the trend that's been there, it doesn't really bode well for him. And I don't think really Josh Norris is really a needle mover going the other way. So it's just very much a wash of a deal as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that was kind of my surface level thought process. You know, I didn't really get a lot of warm and fuzzies. It's not like, coming back to that Bruins trade where, Casey Middlestat going to Boston, I think, is really good for his career. Solely because, even if the Bruins are potentially heading into the dark ages, like, Casey Middlestat's going to be able to, do what he wasn't able to do in, either Buffalo or Colorado. And that really comes down to, the beauty of being a New England, developed player, even though he's not, from there. He's, Edina, Minnesota, but, decided to do his prep league school at Loomis Chaffee, which is definitely not a good sign about maybe his career as a Edina, Minnesota native, not playing for Edina in the high school game. But that is not the point of where I'm going with this. Really, the ability to be a middle six center because he's going to get a level of gratification in Boston that he wouldn't have gotten in either of those two other cities. Of if you're a middle six center for the Boston Bruins, no matter how good or shitty the team is, you're going to be beloved by the fans. So he's going to definitely get the confidence boost of being that guy, your PJ Axelson type guy for the Bruins who's just going to have the ability to be there forever without much consequence.
They really had the double punch of that because as I was not surprised at all to see Marat Huznudinov has the Ty Anderson sign off, which I think Ty is more capable of critical analysis than a lot of people, even in that media sphere. Never mind your standard fan base, but Huznudinov is interesting in that he has a bit of that latent skill. I think that when HC Sochi was putting in with Matvei Michkov, it was more of a successful experiment than not. They had some ebbs and flows as you'd anticipate, especially considering oftentimes like there was a lot of disappointment on the left wing side, irrespective of whether it would be Artur Tyanulan lining up at that spot or someone else, even though Tyanulan did have the team lead in points that season, but probably sold a good number of ones that he could have had as well. I, but like he is also enough of a workman to really like endear himself, and put himself in a good spot as a middle / bottom sixer. Probably going to end up in a bit of a fringe role that the fan base is going to be pretty enthusiastic about. Like in a vicarious way, I was somewhat happy for as someone who's been tracking him for quite a while. Our local market that they have someone who's actually that I even respect quite a fair bit, and that they would very much enjoy for their own reasons.
I'll give Don Sweeney a little bit of credit because, like, as you go down their trade, we've talked Kuznetsov, we've talked like Middlestat, like Fraser Minton also has the skill set of whether or not he pans out to be a great player, he's still got the tools to make him once again a fan favorite in the city of Boston. Of that real two-way, Patrice Bergeron style of game. I'm not going to claim he's going to reach that level, but like whether or not the Bruins are getting pieces that will help their retool / rebuild, which I think is the more accurate word at this point, going out and at least getting the kinds of guys that will appease, the fan base that's known for liking a certain style of hockey, whether or not is fun to watch, is definitely, the man, as bad as he is at his job sometimes, knows what his fans want, with the exception of getting rid of their captain for a conditional draft pick. Aside from the glaring obvious mishap of fan service, um, oh God, Don Sweeney's like Fire Force. Aside from he nailed the obvious bits of fan service he needed with reliable two-way gritty guys in both their roster players and their prospect pool, and that's good for the fans for the coming years where they can latch on to some fan favorites before they're inevitably traded for pennies on the dollar before they're able to retire with the team.
Yeah, I will say, like, I think Minton's value, because he's been kicked around, like, he was speculated in, like, Philadelphia rumors for quite a while, potentially as part of the return for the long rumored Rasmus Ristolainen deal before our eventual trade partnership with Toronto manifested by way of this long-awaited Scott Laughton deal. In which I think we got probably the better part of their prospect pool because, Nikita Grabenkin's coming in with a pretty impressive KHL offensive acumen, along with, a good amount of tenacity to his name, and, a Gagarin Cup from last season. His, like, his body work with Metalurg was something I very much enjoyed taking in. So there's like a point. I do think that Minton's value was like higher than it should have been a little bit, but like not to the point where I actually would probably say that he was a less like very good but like overhyped prospect archetype than Easton Cowan was, because like I think I see Minton and I see NHL translatability for what he aspires to be to an extent that I actually don't see as much with Cowan, unless of course the latter changes his game enough to where he can accommodate his level of talent to the NHL game, but and bearing that in mind, like he is like when you're looking at it from a culture standpoint, like which is more valuable to these next phases for a team with going in that sort of direction. Not to the way that people have to a degree rightfully, although I do think we have positive signs of them going in a different direction that we proceed with Philadelphia, but and their manner of going about it. But having a cultural reason organizationally for people to latch on and be invested in a rebuild is like very key, because there is still a business component to this, and it's not like there are tangible hockey benefits with the Minton acquisition. He's been tracking what he did with what he has to his name with Saskatoon has been another thing that I've really enjoyed. So I admire it to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of value, I think Philly did have probably the best trade of the day. And that's not to undersell what Lawton brings to the table, but to get Grebenkin and a future first for what he brought to the table on a seller's market where, like, I think the Islanders got similar value for Brock Nelson, but I think that Nelson historically has, experience of being an effective, one first, second, and third line center. So a little bit more to Nelson's toolkit and a playoff experience. He should have gotten the value of a Cal Ritchie and a 2026 first round pick plus a third, but like the haul that the fly like Danny Briere did a very good job getting probably the best dollar for dollar, asset for asset deal here out of any seller at the market, just based off of kind of looking at, really what came back. Like, yeah, Minton in a first is a similar return for Carlo, but like Brandon Carlo is one of the highest wins above replacement, goals above replacement, stay-at-home right-handed defenders in the league over the last 8 seasons when he's not injured, which, is worth just a little, more. So to think that, like, Philadelphia got the same value as Brandon Carlo effectively and Brock Nelson almost at the deadline is just some really, really good business from Danny.
Yeah. I feel the need to point out, he exceeded Brad Marchand's value by a considerable amount. Even as their captain with like a significantly higher ceiling, that. Sure, their second could turn into a first if he plays half of their playoff games, but we have a future first and a prospect with great prowess that also has something of a relationship with our obvious future franchise cornerstone. And this is bearing in mind that Lawton has exceeded or matched 40 points exactly once in his career as a player who really is touted as 200 foot, but I think that defense is really imaginary. He's definitely an offensive-minded player more than anything. I think he's an example of a 200-foot player tag being applied to compensate for an offensive-minded player not producing the offensive results that he should, which I think even like Travis Konechny is kind of a premium version of that as well. But beyond that, like when that expected goals is probably my favorite stat by like a significant margin, to the point where I would rather just look at XG than look at player cards that are so popular. But when looking at his impact on players' expected goal shares last season, I anticipate that this year is pretty similar. That's kind of what I gleaned. But like Lawton was one of 3 players on the team alongside Nick Delorier and Cam Atkinson that had negative impacts on every player they played with expected goal shares. Like he was not an asset to anybody. He didn't make anyone play better in that category. So for them to have pulled this off, even at like half retained until the end of next season, is really just incredible work.
Yeah. And now that we've hit on some D3 and we've hit on the deadline. I'm gonna roll it over to you for some Dev League prospect.
The first one is quite fun, as it ties back to what was something of a semi-viral brawl in the Ontario Hockey League, which, of course, in some real Calgary, Vancouver throwback energy, featured coaches, this time right between the benches as opposed to in the tunnel for a dressing room. The headline reads, the OHL has announced disciplinary action against both the Erie Otters and the Peterborough Petes hockey clubs as a result of events during the regular season game of March 2nd at Erie. Let's see. Erie head Otters head coach Chris Mallett has been assessed a 5-game suspension, while assistant coach Ken Peroff has been suspended for 2 games. The Erie Otters Hockey Club has also been fined $7,500. Erie Otters player Alex Messier has been suspended for a total of 9 games as a result of his infractions that included being assessed a game misconduct aggressor, as well as a game misconduct for continuing an altercation while also exceeding the regular season fighting major threshold during the incident, which is an automatic 2-game suspension. Peterborough head coach Rob Wilson has been assessed a 5-game suspension, and the Peterborough Petes Hockey Club has been fined $5,000. Peterborough Petes player Graydon Strohack has been suspended for a total of 4 games as a result of his infractions that included a game misconduct for being the third man into a fight, which is an automatic 2-game suspension, as well as a game misconduct for continuing an altercation. Man, yeah, it was really, really satisfying seeing that one having some popularity on Instagram. As I'm like, yeah, this sort of thing happens a little more often than you think in the CHL. Of course, on the same day, we had a slightly less enjoyable headline regarding discipline. This, of course, was in Ontario's court system with London Knights star Cam Allen, of course, acquired by trade not too long ago, just a little bit before the deadline, earlier in the calendar year, from the Guelph Storm, and whose NHL rights lie with the Washington Capitals after they drafted him in round 5 in 2023. 20-year-old, in his final CHL slash OHL season, pleaded guilty and has been sentenced for impaired driving after a crash in southwest London, according to the London Free Press. Cam Allen was supposed to make his first court appearance on Thursday after he was charged February 8th following a single-car crash near Colonel Talbot Road and Clayton Walk in the city's Lambeth neighborhood at about 3:20 a.m. Instead, his case was quietly brought forward by his defense lawyer, Ron Ellis, on February 27th, where Allen pleaded guilty to one count of impaired driving before Ontario Court Justice Wendy Harris Bentley. Allen was sentenced to 2 years of probation, including an order to complete 100 hours of community service. He is prohibited from driving for 2 years. Part of his probation order includes counseling for alcohol issues, and he was additionally fined $4,000 and must pay a $1,200 victim fine surcharge for a total of $5,200. He has 12 months to pay. As the LFP puts it, it was a speedy end to a criminal matter that often takes months to complete in courts. Of course, this also does not stop and end there, as the OHL has to complete their own independent review after, the court hands down their decision, which they have, and the OHL, per their words, on March 7th, 2 days ago, announced the conclusion of a league review into the actions of London Knights player Cam Allen on February 8th, 2025, that resulted in his being charged by the London Police Service with offenses related to impaired driving. Now that the legal matter has been concluded, the OHL has imposed several requirements of Allen in order to be reinstated to play in the league, which he will be eligible for starting on Sunday, March 16th, following a period of 15 games under suspension. Reinstatement requirements include mandatory enrollment in a counseling program for substance abuse and an associated treatment plan. Allen is also required to engage in community service dedicated to giving back to the hockey community, as well as participation in an accountability program. He will be subject to an ensuing probationary period upon his return to play. Allen's reinstatement, effective March 16th, will be subject to satisfying the league that he is actively participating in the above noted rehabilitation measures. So there you go. That's where he stands in a league context, beyond the legal implications, which of course are plentiful. Although he has his second chance to pay his civil debt. Avoided jail time. Definitely a matter that should be taken seriously, given obvious, very much safety worries embedded into such an incident or transgression, or however you want to describe it. Some gravity to that one for sure. Definitely not troubling to read about, not easy to discuss. But thankfully, we have some more feel-good headlines from the OHL this week. Zane Parekh tallied his 100th point on March 6th with the Saginaw Spirit. I suppose talisman, if you will, although, you could also give that title to Michael Misa this year for sure. And Calgary Flames prospect became just the 10th defenseman in OHL history to hit the 100-point mark in a season, and the first to do it in 14 years since Ryan Ellis in 2011. So a lot of commendation to him for hitting that mark. Let's see. He additionally was named to the CHL's Team of the Month for February that same day, with him and the Victoria Royals' Justin Kipke, who of course is a Utah Hockey Club prospect, forming the defensive pair. Parekh had 7 goals and 24 assists in the month of February, while Kipke had 4 goals and 11 assists. Berkeley Catton of the Spokane Chiefs, property of the Seattle Kraken, was given one of the forward spots with 13 goals and 21 assists to his name, while Nick Lardis of the Brantford Bulldogs, Chicago Blackhawks prospect, who's been having quite a campaign, was given another one with 21 goals and 10 assists to his name during the month of February, whilst 2025 draft eligible prospect Michael Misa of the Saginaw Spirit was given the last forward spot with 17 goals and 17 assists to his name. Hold on just a second. Meanwhile, the goaltender of the month was, of course, as one would anticipate, with him being consistently a backbone of the best team in the QMJHL in the form of the Moncton Wildcats. Red Wings prospect Rudy Guimond was given the goaltender spot on the Team of the Month with the 2.99 GAA and a .933 save percentage to his name last month. So congratulations to all those guys. It was good to see that all three of the major leagues were represented within the CHL. Get some promotion for all of the above. Of course, I love to see a Victoria Royal in there as well. On that same day, the Brampton Steelheads clinched their spot in the postseason for the OHL. They're in pursuit of their first OHL championship. Probably a long shot odds, but with a good run from like the likes of Carson Raycop, Porter Martone, you never know what can happen. They could at least end up being representatives of their conference when all is said and done if they hit their ceiling. Want to give a congratulations also. This is a big day for 3 days ago for OHL and CHL headlines as Jacob Julien of the London Knights signed his entry-level contract with the Winnipeg Jets. Let's see. Yesterday, the WHL, probably 2 days ago their time, that was when the game occurred. But nevertheless, that was when the WHL commended Andrew Crystal for becoming the first WHL player in the 21st century to record 400 career points. He's one of those guys where, he's just putting up impressive numbers throughout his entire time in the WHL. He was a draft steal by the Washington Capitals the moment it happened in round 2 in 2023. He's one of those guys where it's just been, I don't mind him being on that WHL grindstone because he's just been putting up video game numbers that just has been really, really satisfying to watch. So, congratulations to him on hitting such a historic milestone. Definitely a big part of why the Spokane Chiefs, who won that game 9-2 against the Victoria Royals, are such a team to beat in the WHL. We could very much see them as the representatives of the Dub at the Memorial Cup when all is said and done this year. Meanwhile, of course, for the Medicine Hat Tigers, we had Gavin McKenna, 2026 draft eligible, had his historic point streak reached 36 games. Per the WHL, McKenna's 36-game point streak is the longest in the WHL's internet era and the third longest in the CHL since 2000. Next weekend, he can tie Sidney Crosby's 37-game mark set back in 2004-2005. So that was quite a headline to read yesterday. Let's see. Moving up, speaking of Nick Lardis, yesterday he was commended for hitting 70 goals on the season, which is a mark he hit in an emphatic victory against the Saginaw Spirit for the Brantford Bulldogs. For the OHL, the NHL Blackhawks prospect and Bulldogs OHL forward registered his second goal of the evening and his 70th goal of the season to become the first player in the OHL to hit 70 goals since John Tavares in the 2006-07 season, and the 8th player overall to score 70 goals in a single season across OHL history. So congratulations to him. What a D+2 he's been having in the O. Additionally, I want to give some commendation for WHL team milestone. Of course, not the greatest game overall for his club, but I want to commend Keaton Verhoff on the air for his 2 goals against the Spokane Chiefs in that matchup to bring his total on the season for 20 on the season 220, which of course was a season record for a Victoria Royals defenseman. Really impressive achievement by a 16-year-old in his D-1 on a team with multiple defensemen who have NHL rights already, with namely the aforementioned Justin Kipke and Sharks prospect Nate Miskey. So really just amazing stuff. Additionally, want to commend Victoria for their strong effort against Spokane in the rematch last night, wherein Cole Rushney scored the sole goal to tie it up. Eventually, they fell in the shootout, but really some impressive defensive effort by the team as a cohort, really, and especially against such an offensive wagon. And Johnny Hicks, particularly his performance in net against this, a very difficult opponent. 27 saves on 28 shots against. Of course, Dawson Cowan on the other side at 33 on 34. But really just like impressive work in the pipes for Hicks. One of his best performances on the season, and what was a very interesting season for him, in which he, of course, transferred from the BCHL's Brooks Bandits under what is believed to be fairly tense circumstances from what I've gleaned. As I've said before, I'm kind of trying to play that close to the chest just because you never know what you might be saying about some of the parties involved that may or may not be true. I try not to recklessly circulate things like that, but it's out there if people are curious. Additionally, I want to give props to the Saskatoon Blades for clinching a playoff spot in the WHL with an average age of, I believe, 17.9, thanks to them selling off a lot of their older, experienced and valuable pieces, including but not limited to, franchise legend Brandon Lazowski as part of their rebuilding efforts. The youngest team in the Dub to clinch a playoff spot. Really impressive work sticking with it after having sold as aggressively as they had. But I want to wrap this up with some coverage of what is often known simply as the tourney, as the 2025 edition wrapped up over the weekend. That is, of course, the Minnesota State High School League boys tournament for ice hockey. Some big, a really impressive culmination of quite an amazing run by the East Grand Forks Green Wave as they defeated, the St. Cloud Cathedral Crusaders in the championship game for the Class A state championship, 2-1 in overtime. Quite as a Class A hockey guy on X put it, this is an amazing run. East Grand Forks goes from preseason number 1 to out of the top 10 by season's end. They then knocked off the number 1 team, the number 1 tourney seed, and the defending champs to win their third ever state title, to complement victories from 2014, 2015, and just 2014 and 2015, and really just putting quite an exclamation point on an amazing story in the state of hockey. Definitely a fantastic underdog story that'll live with these guys for the rest of their lives, I'm sure, just because, this is an event with a lot of gravity. Meanwhile, over in, let's see, check something here. No, this was, oh yeah, the Class AA championship was also quite historic. Another team from Section 8 defeated, in the form of the Moorhead Spuds, defeated Stillwater 7-6. So with East Grand Forks being the representative of Section 8A, we had the HSL doubly represented at that level, which is, a really big deal. We saw mutual acknowledgement from the schools on their respective achievements, which was pretty cool. The attendance for that was, per Stephen Hubbard, was 20,000 on X was 20,491, greater than any NHL game this season, which really speaks to how just like monumental that this is every year. But as I was commenting to Christian at the MASCAC Championship last night, this really felt like a special edition of this tournament. Just so many great moments that were rightfully, getting a good amount of media coverage and social media viral status. I want to commend, as the USHL did themselves on their social media, USHL affiliates, Mason Kraft, Titan Bergeson, Brooks Cullen, Max Cullen, and Zach Zimmerman for their victory with Moorhead in the Class AA AA championship. So really speaking to the impact that Minnesota's high school environment has on higher levels of hockey. It's about I'd say their quality of play and just talent production is on par with a good number of junior leagues, and even superior to a number of them, I would argue, which is just really amazing, considering it speaks to their developmental capacity, considering the talent pool, quantitatively in the grand scheme of things isn't even the largest. So it's just really just shows how impressive that those programs are. And yeah, I think that wraps it up for this week's edition of the Dev Block.
And it's so fascinating to see, as players come and players go. So I'm going to open up an interesting thought. Paul Bizanek got my wheels turning a little bit during an intermission during the Penguins and the Wild. It might have been during the Devils Flyers. I don't remember. But, they were talking about the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I thought about it as Biz brought up, Zach Werenski should be in the MVP conversation. And I actually agree with that point. I think he's onto something, and it's unfortunate he's not going to be in the Hart Trophy conversation or in the Norris conversation. Let me rephrase. He'll be in the conversation for the Norris. He is not going to win because he's up against Makar and Hughes and, the Canadian vote for Bouchard. But, Werenski really should probably be getting a good amount of Hart votes this year because, you look at that Columbus Blue line and, Dante Fabro's having a better year than expected. Provorov statistically is benefiting from the presence of Zach Werenski pretty heavily. And you look at that team, and if that team makes the playoffs, I'm not entirely sure how he's not a Hart Trophy finalist. The best player on a team that is a fringe playoff team who has a point share of almost 17 from the blue line. He's on pace for 88 points. He plays great in his own zone every night. I'd be really disappointed in NHL awards voters if he's not at least acquiring some votes at this point.
Yeah, no arguments from me. Like I look at like his impact on like Provorov's expected goals, just to provide one example of the manifestation of that phenomenon, and that alone says a lot. Never mind the PS figures on top of that. Like I genuinely have perceived perceived him as one of the best defensemen of his generation for a considerable amount of time, and like I think it's really impressive that, like, as in spite of like setbacks with injuries, with and also what that whole team dealt with over the summer with the Gaudreau tragedy, like, is having like a fucking emphatic statement year that has been like a thrill to watch. Like, just even like micro narratives night in and night out, like that heroic performance against Tampa Bay, which where his OTGWG was just the culmination of so many other things he did in that game. Like really just the tip of the iceberg. Like which still stands as like probably my favorite game I've watched this year. Like even bearing in mind, a lot of when it's been allowed to happen, I guess you could say it's a lot of Mishkov like master classes that I've enjoyed. Like the Washington game, which of course for my own reasons I'm content that ended in a regulation loss. His game against New Jersey also very satisfying. When he had in the matchup he had a goal and we had a pretty emphatic win in a couple of months back. But like that was like my probably like the most exciting game I've watched with like the most like electrifying individual performance that I can recall like this season. And like I just like stuff like that is like stuff I would love, for him to get, any fair degree of recognition for.
For sure. Now onto the topic of something sad. I was looking at our Ducks calendar for the last 2 days, and for some reason I thought we were playing Edmonton tonight. And that really tells you the level of brain rot from lack of sleep watching so many hockey games recently that I misperceived the Islanders as the Oilers and have been assuming we were probably going to lose tonight for the last 2 days. Um, Still probably going to lose tonight because Anaheim looks like they're out of magic. But I will say that Edmonton game though was speaking of the games that we've enjoyed watching the most throughout this season. Like I've had the pleasure and the general displeasure on many nights the last couple of years of I've watched a lot of Jackson LaCombe. I've watched a lot of his career so far, and I watched how badly he got beaten down in tough deployments in last season. And really, seeing him turn the corner and become something that I don't think anybody really thought he was going to be. Speaking of guys from Minnesota, even though he was Shattuck St. Mary's. Just really fucking exciting to see people perceive him as a very good, effective microstats defenseman. Um, just, we go in, we play an Oilers team that should beat us 9 times out of 10, and we end up blowing their doors off. Just felt good.
Yeah.
To just see the culmination of all of this group's struggles. Cutter had a great night. McTavish had a great night. Just seeing guys who, you've watched them ride the struggle bus for a couple years and see like all that hard work and all of the lessons learned through failure manifest into something not negative for once was really fulfilling and refreshing. If that hasn't been the fucking narrative for Black Stitch Hockey the last couple of weeks of watching, the the lessons the painful lessons yielding satisfying results has just become such an enjoyable part of watching hockey lately.
As I recall, both McDavid and Bouchard had multiple point games in that matchup as well, so that was quite a thing to overcome. I definitely remember that game pretty fondly.
And,
Go ahead.
that's my favorite part of, college hockey playoff season and really the end of the year is just watching, across multiple leagues. We saw this on the MCLA run that we've very heavily talked about on social media, and Plattsburgh's run that they got out over in the Suniac. Just just love to see, you guys learning to live with, and you look at a guy like Cutter, and you look at a guy like LeCun, and you look at a lot of these guys who've never really faced a lot of adversity in their career. And, like Jack Eichel finding success in Vegas was such an emphatic part of this, like, thing that I love to see in hockey, where, like, and it's part of being like a top pick is, usually if you're a top pick in the draft, you've had a lot of success throughout your junior, midget careers, etc. So like when a lot of these guys face adversity for the first time, them learning how to actually, process the mental pain of failure and learning not to, not to shut down or not to learn to like, oh, I just have to put my head down and be the better version of myself, but to learn to live with the consequence and learn with the pain of their failure, and then go on to achieve something is just so fucking compelling. Like like that time, the time Jack Eichel spent in Buffalo was clearly weighing so heavily on him mentally, not only from his injury but the adversity of failure, and for him to learn from that and really be such a core leader for Vegas on their Stanley Cup run. Like that's one of my favorite, arcs to watch in hockey, and like being able to see it at, the D3 level, the D1 level, and now the NHL level this year. Just it's really really exciting, and it's a really fulfilling last couple of, months, really.
That is fact. Yeah, it's definitely like, you know, uh, something that I admire as like or and not always necessarily admire because of course there are times where like it it's a pretty like hefty thing to deal with. Like if we're confronting something that's like you know has off ice implications, like a nature that like transcends hockey. It is like something that places like a young player on the grindstone, but it's something a lot of those guys aren't used to dealing with, and like putting themselves to and or being put to the test like that, like is just it's a very strong tool for cultivation. Additionally, while I have the floor, I want to make a bit of an amendment to my statement. I should frame it the capacity for for the the attendance for the Moorhead Stillwater Class AA final was, I should note, higher than the average attendance for most NHL games, for most NHL teams this season, is how I should frame that. The one exception, of course, being Montreal, due to them averaging 100% sellout at their 21,105 capacity venue. But other than that, that's it. I just wanted to make that slight adjustment there. Of course, the manner in which it was articulated, as MSG just pointed out during their broadcast of the ongoing Rangers game, in which they covered some out-of-town hockey headlines. They're, of course, during their second intermission, which is currently ongoing, articulated it in a manner wherein 7 other games across the NHL were highlighted as having, which, pretty high turnout games, like such as the Cutter game at Wells Fargo Center this year. That final had higher attendance than, which is really just an impressive feat and a testament to Minnesota high school hockey's grip on the region. I also want to tack on a couple more dev headlines from NCAA D1. Want to give a shout out to Cole Eiserman for reaching the 20 goal threshold last night on the season, which of course was significant in that since 1990, only 4 freshmen in Terriers across the Terriers rosters since then have reached that number, with the company that he's in being Jack Eichel, Clayton Keller, and of course last year's Macklin Celebrini. So very good work by our fellow Essex County boy. Doing good work, playing in his backyard. Of course, let's see. Let me get just a refresher. I think I remember the final score for that game, but I just want to make sure. Pass it again. Yes. Okay. Vermont did get one back, so 6-1 was the final score for BU over Vermont in that game. Of course, though, while the Terriers ended the regular season on a high note, and will have home ice advantage for the Hockey East quarterfinals. Boston College, the Green Line rival, captured some hardware last night with their 6-0 victory over Merrimack College, which cemented their fairly expected status as Hockey East regular season champions. Definitely, a lot less climactic than Western Mich winning their first ever regular season conference title this year, which was one of my favorite narratives across the NCAA, because I really did not expect that at all. Really impressive work by them in, a competitive environment over in NCHC, for sure. So that was pretty cool. Much credit to Flyers prospect Alex Bump for having a pretty respectable campaign as a guy who I think can slot in as a pretty good middle six winger down the road in the NHL. But neither here nor there, really. Playoff season is effectively upon us now in NCAA D1. Should be cool how to see it all and to see how it all shakes out. I think Hockey East ran it back as or at least reasserted their status as an extremely competitive conference, and arguably the best one. With BC leading the pack, although interestingly enough, I actually think this team looks a little bit less invulnerable than the one from last season. So you never know if they're going to make it back to the national title game. So I do think there's some volatility in how things can go in the long run. But yeah, it should be pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, seeing Hockey East just be such a great conference once again. I look down on the Riverhawks, constantly, because they do things that force me to. But even despite all of their fuck uppins this season, they're still a top 20 program in the pairwise, and they're inevitably gonna fuck this up on Wednesday night and somehow lose to UNH in the preliminary round. And I hope they don't, but I'm not gonna expect more from them, because at the end of the day, it's gonna be a tough. I don't. BC's the favorite to take home the hardware this year, but it's not like the top 5. If Providence managed to find a way to do it, I wouldn't be that shocked. And I think that's one of the only conferences where, besides maybe the NCHC, where if the 5th ranked team in the conference fucked around and won it, I guess, yeah, I guess that's kind of common, but that's only because Penn State up in the Big Ten is having an electrifying campaign. But man, just the depth of that conference is unbelievable some seasons.
Yeah. Pertaining to UMass Lowell, I do think that one thing that kind of worked in their favor is that losses in Hockey East Conference action are very rare to really affect your pairwise standing just because the strength of schedule is so good. But, like, they had, some strong strings of results here and there. One that only had tie status in like the pairwise context, but one that stands out the most in the memory, of course, amongst what was one of those fairly good runs was the tie and subsequent shootout victory against Boston College at home, which of course I was in attendance for. And one of my probably at least top three most iconic in-person hockey experiences, to be honest with you. But like, bearing that in mind, about schedule implications, like I do think, uh, aside from like having another, although less catastrophic season, but some seasons where like injury implications came into play. I do think that their lack of depth was exposed at some junctures as well. Like it just like some things seemed to crumble for them just because of that, and just that lack of consistency. The mental game not always being there, apparent from how it seemed. But like they proved their mettle like enough to where I agree with where they landed statistically in that respect. But if you're like a faithful like I am, you're kind of looking ahead to next year because I agree with what we saw from NXT Prospects, I believe is the name of that outlet. That assess that they're going to be one of the biggest winners and already have effectively asserted that with their recruiting from the CHL to NCAA transfer agreement. You with Austin Elliott being between the pipes next year. With after this amazing, just like reclamation project season he's had of sorts with the London Knights after having cleared WHL waivers outright, which just incredible to me that no WHL team wanted that goalie. Just I can't even believe that now. Very good defenseman from the Edmonton Oil Kings in the form of Josh Morey, to bolster the back end. And just like, Norm Bazin just really tapping into that Western Canada pipeline as I expected him to. Like, you got to really just look ahead to next year at this point if you're a Riverhawks fan. I've already consigned myself to that.
And on consigning ourselves to the future, it is time for us to hit our big finish this week.
So this one is a bit more sentimental. I usually do like takes-based things where I talk about changes I want to see, but really I just want to give, on another Hockey East related note, I want to give a sign off to the most I guess really the most historic barn as the oldest in the United States. In the form of Matthews Arena at Northeastern University, as its final game is likely upon us with, the plans for demolition to make way for a new athletics complexes along the way. Was from a logistical standpoint, is it probably its time? Yeah, but just think that this was a barn that a venue just that had tremendous implications for like early NHL history, even as the Boston Bruins' first home, if memory serves, as well as just having been a part of so many chapters collegiately at Northeastern, and just for many developments across the NCAA D1 landscape. And so it's just going to be, a very, very different world in this region, hockey-wise, without that rink without that rink standing any longer. If those plans do indeed come to fruition, so I just, I guess as um, pardon the interruption, would put it, just good old happy trails to the Matthews.
I wanted to take a second, this week to really double down and double click on the Plymouth State women's hockey team winning the MASCAC this year in its inaugural season. So many good things to say. A second year head coach collecting their first, conference championship after truly, genuinely rebuilding and building a program that had only won 6 games in 23-24. Just turning that program around, knocking down, Riviere and Worcester State and Anna Maria, who've all had, more time and more successful programs in the last few years. Just a real masterclass in effort, coaching, determination for that group to not only have the season they did, but, after their men's team, who was heavily favored to win the MASCAC, was knocked out in the quarterfinals, to not only have the resolve to sell out the barn and take them to the conference championship, but to play into a fourth overtime in the second longest game in D3 women's hockey history, and to just really outgrind their opponent to win that game and to win that conference title. It was just really special for what women's hockey can be, especially at that level. And they got the best kind of deal in college hockey, where and this is a kind of a shitty thing to think about, but not getting an auto bid and not being able to go to the national tournament. This is one of the few and only times that you can end your collegiate hockey season on a win while actually achieving something. Because, once you're into the playoffs, only one team that makes the playoffs is able to, finish on a win. You either lose or you win the championship, and that's about it. I look at that Fitchburg State team that defeated MCLA, and unless they go and win it all, their fate is the same as the boys at MCLA and Plymouth State and Salem State. To be able to win your conference and have such an emphatic, strong story and actually get to punctuate it without a loss is just such an awesome thing for that program to experience, where they can truly sit back and process what they accomplished.
Yeah, really, some uh, impressive work there. Yeah, that transformation, and just for it to conclude with absolute cinema of a game, as we've spent a lot of time conversing with our circle about just some beautiful stuff. That's the beauty, as you said last night, in a slightly different context, but one that it feels applicable nevertheless. Also, I want to take a shot at Eric Tulsky for being a non-closer before we wrap up. Just consider the fact that Carolina could have completed more deals if the logistics of the Rantanen trade had wrapped up sooner. Talk about a massive L. I guess he's inherited the can't close disease that apparently plagued Danny Briere for so long. But yeah, that about covers it for tonight. I doubt, actually, well, you never know, because we are knocking on the door of even more consequential hockey and a lot of stuff in a lot of areas that we cover. I have my doubts that there will be this much excitement next week, but I could very much be wrong about that. So maybe the next episode will be as good, but no promises. I did sign off with "we'll try to do better next time" for many months for a reason, and it wasn't just yet another PTI ripoff. We're really trying to, and we have a considerable amount of support now that we weren't expecting to get, including a lot from members of the MCLA slash NASC, as it was once known, alumni community, including but not limited to who we can now effectively call a friend of the program in the form of Rear Admiral at Spit and Chicklets. That we just are really in awe of, and we were already pretty driven to put in more work for this brand, and like we just have been getting places, but we're really going to step it up in a lot of respects that we are really making a point to do. And we want to thank everybody who's continuing to provide us with motivation and inspiration. As much as I talk about this, effect that this and just this tremendous feeling of inspiration I've gotten from things I've written about, spoken about on this for this brand. There's plenty of it being provided just by the support that we've gotten as well, and I just really in awe of us seeming to achieve a lot of goals that we set out for ourselves in a lot more time than a lot less time than I really anticipated when we started this up. It's been a fast track that we've been on that I'm really appreciative of, and we look forward to what comes next and sharing our next phases of work with you guys. So thank you to everyone who's ongoing as a part of this story for us. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to everyone checking us out on Spotify and YouTube. We'll see you again in a week, most likely. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.